Princess Margaret, Countess of Snowdon, was the younger daughter of King George VI and Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, and the younger sister and only sibling of Queen Elizabeth II. Margaret spent much of her childhood with her parents and sister. Her life changed dramatically at the age of 6 when King Edward VIII, her paternal uncle, abdicated to marry divorcee Wallis Simpson. Margaret's father became king and her sister became heir presumptive, with Margaret second in line to the throne. Her position in the line of succession diminished over the following decades as Elizabeth's children and grandchildren were born. During the Second World War, the two sisters stayed at Windsor Castle despite suggestions to evacuate them to Canada. During the war years, Margaret was too young to perform official duties and continued her education, being 9 years old when the war broke out and turning 15 just after hostilities ended. From the 1950s onwards, Margaret became one of the world's most celebrated socialites, famed for her glamorous lifestyle and reputed romances. Most famously, she fell in love in the early 1950s with Peter Townsend, a married RAF officer in the royal household. In 1952, her father died, her sister became queen and Townsend divorced his wife. He proposed to Margaret early in the following year. Many in the government believed that he would be an unsuitable husband for the Queen's 22-year-old sister, and the Archbishop of Canterbury refused to countenance her marriage to a divorced man. Margaret abandoned her plans with Townsend and married Antony Armstrong-Jones in 1960. The Queen created him Earl of Snowdon. The couple had 2 children, David Armstrong-Jones, 2nd Earl of Snowdon, and Lady Sarah Chatto, before divorcing in 1978. Margaret did not remarry. Margaret was a controversial member of the British royal family. Her divorce received much negative publicity, and her private life was for many years the subject of speculation by media and royal watchers. Her health deteriorated in the last 20 years of her life. She was a heavy smoker for most of her adult life, and had a lung operation in 1985, a bout of pneumonia in 1993, and at least 3 strokes between 1998 and 2001. She died in London on February 9, 2002, after a 4th and final stroke at the age of 71. Early life. Armstrong-Jones was the only son of the marriage of the Welsh barrister Ronald Armstrong-Jones and his first wife, Anne Messel. He was born at Eaton Terrace in Belgravia, central London. He was called Tony by his close relatives. Armstrong-Jones's paternal grandfather was Sir Robert Armstrong-Jones, a Welsh psychiatrist. His paternal grandmother, Margaret Armstrong-Jones, was a graduate of Somerville College, Oxford, and was the daughter of Sir Owen Roberts, the Welsh educationalist. Armstrong-Jones's mother's family was of German Jewish descent. A maternal uncle was the stage designer Oliver Messel, a maternal great-grandfather was the Punch cartoonist Linley Sambourne, and his great-great-uncle Alfred Messel was a Berlin architect. Additionally, his great-great-grandmother, Frances Linley, was a first cousin of Elizabeth Linley, wife of Richard Brinsley Sheridan. Armstrong-Jones's parents divorced in early 1935, before his 5th birthday. His mother remarried later that year. As a schoolboy he contracted polio while on holiday at their country home in Wales. During the 6 months that he was in the Liverpool Royal Infirmary recuperating, his only family visits were from his sister Susan. Education. Armstrong-Jones was educated at 2 independent boarding schools, first at Sandroyd School in Wiltshire from the autumn term of 1938 to 1943. Armstrong-Jones attended Eton College, beginning in the autumn term of 1943. In March 1945, he qualified in the extra special weight class of the school boxing finals. He continued to box in 1946, gaining at least 2 flattering mentions in the Eton College Chronicle. In 1947, he was a coxswain in Eton's traditional 4th of June daylight procession of boats. He then matriculated at the University of Cambridge, where he studied architecture at Jesus College but failed his second-year exams. He coxed the winning Cambridge boat in the 1950 boat race. Career. After university, Armstrong-Jones began a career as a photographer in fashion, design, and theatre. His stepmother had a friend who knew Baron the photographer. Baron visited Armstrong-Jones in his London flat, which doubled as his work studio. Baron, impressed, agreed to bring on Armstrong-Jones as an apprentice, first on a fee-paying basis but eventually, as his talent and skills became apparent to Baron, as a salaried associate. Much of his early commissions were theatrical portraits, often with recommendations from his uncle Oliver Messel, and society portraits highly favoured in Tatler, which, in addition to buying many of his photographs, gave him byline credit for the captions. He later became known for his royal studies, among which were the official portraits of Queen Elizabeth II and the Duke of Edinburgh during their 1957 tour of Canada. He was also an early contributor to Queen magazine, the magazine owned by his friend Jocelyn Stevens. In the early 1960s, Snowdon became the artistic advisor of the Sunday Times magazine, and by the 1970s had established himself as one of Britain's most respected photographers. Though his work included everything from fashion photography to documentary images of inner-city life and the mentally ill, he is best known for his portraits of world notables, many of them published in Vogue, Vanity Fair, and the Daily Telegraph magazine. His subjects include Marlene Dietrich, Laurence Olivier, Maggie Smith, Leslie Caron, Lynn Fontanne, David Bowie, Elizabeth Taylor, Rupert Everett, Anthony Blunt, David Hockney, Princess Grace of Monaco, Diana, Princess of Wales, Barbara Cartland, Rain Spencer, Desmond Guinness, British Prime Minister Harold Macmillan, Iris Murdoch, Tom Stoppard, Vladimir Nabokov and J.R.R. Tolkien. Over 100 of his photographs are in the permanent collections of the National Portrait Gallery in London. In 1968, he made his first documentary film, Don't Count the Candles, for the U.S. television network CBS, on the subject of aging. It won 7 awards, including 2 Emmys. This was followed by Love of a Kind, about the British and animals, Born to be Small about people of restricted growth and Happy Being Happy. In October 1981, a group portrait by Snowdon of the British rock band Queen was used on the cover of their greatest hits album. A Snowdon portrait of Freddie Mercury was used in 2000 on the cover of Mercury's compilation box set The Solo Collection. In 2000, Snowdon was given a retrospective exhibition at the National Portrait Gallery, Photographs by Snowdon, a retrospective, which travelled to the Yale Centre for British Art the following year. More than 180 of his photographs were displayed in an exhibition that honoured what the museums called a rounded career with sharp edges. Snowdon was an honorary Fellow of the Royal Photographic Society. He was awarded the Hood Medal of the Society in 1978 and the Progress Medal in 1985. In 2006, Tomas Mayer, creative director of the Italian fashion brand Bottega Veneta, brought in Snowdon to photograph his autumn/winter 2006 campaign. Designs and inventions. Snowdon CO designed the Snowdon Aviary of the London Zoo. He later said it was one of his creations of which he was most proud, and affectionately called it the birdcage. He also had a major role in designing the physical arrangements for the 1969 investiture of his nephew Prince Charles as Prince of Wales. He was granted a patent for a type of electric wheelchair in 1971. Philanthropy and charity. During his royal marriage, he was patron of the National Youth Theatre, the Contemporary Art Society for Wales, the Welsh Theatre Company, and the Civic Trust for Wales. He was also president of the British Theatre Museum. In the 1960s he served as a council member of the Polio Research Fund, later renamed the National Fund for Research into Crippling Diseases. He served as a trustee of the National Fund for Research into Crippling Diseases, since renamed Action Medical Research. In June 1980, Snowdon started an award scheme for disabled students. This scheme, administered by the Snowdon Trust, provides grants and scholarships for students with disabilities. He was President for England of the International Year of Disabled Persons in 1981. He was Provost of the Royal College of Art from 1995 to 2003. Publications. Snowdon authored and curated a book of his own photographs, entitled, Snowdon, A Life in View. It was edited by his daughter Lady Frances von Hofmannsthal. Graydon Carter wrote the foreword. Patrick Kinmont wrote the introduction. Tom Ford is listed as a contributor in the book's credentials. It was published by Rizzoli in 2017. Generally, his publications have been attributed to Antony Armstrong-Jones. Occasionally, the byline includes Earl of Snowdon, and most of the titles at least contain Snowdon in the title. Other publications include Assignments. Snowdon, a photographic autobiography. Snowdon Sittings. Snowdon Stills. Public appearances 1987 to 1991, Snowdon. Wild Flowers. Wild Fruit. Robertson, Brian, Snowdon, Antony Armstrong-Jones, Russell, John. Private View. London, Nelson. OCLC 101-728-4892. Snowdon on Stage, with a personal view of the British theatre 1954 to 1996. Israel, a first view. Pride of the Shires, the story of the Whitbread horses. Serendipity by Snowdon. Personal life. Snowdon was married twice, first to Princess Margaret and secondly to Lucy Mary Lindsay Hogg. First marriage. In February 1960, Snowdon, then known as Antony Armstrong-Jones, became engaged to the Queen's sister, Princess Margaret, and they married on May 6, 1960 at Westminster Abbey. The ceremony was the first royal wedding to be broadcast on television. Despite the enthusiasm of the public, some critics disapproved of a commoner marrying into the royal family. The couple made their home in apartments at Kensington Palace. He was created Earl of Snowdon and Viscount Linley, of Nymans in the county of Sussex, on October 6, 1961. The couple had 2 children, David, 2nd Earl of Snowdon, born November 3, 1961, and Lady Sarah, born May 1, 1964. The marriage began to collapse early and publicly. Various causes may have been behind the failure. On Margaret's end there was her penchant for late-night partying, while on Snowdon's part there was his undisguised sexual addiction. Most of the girls who worked in the Pimlico Road studio, there seemed little doubt that Tony was gay. To which Tony responds, "I didn't fall in love with boys, but a few men have been in love with me." The authorized biography by Anne de Courcy reveals a series of affairs with women, including a 20-year relationship with his mistress Anne Hills, and that Armstrong-Jones did not deny that he was bisexual. In his 2009 memoir, Redeeming Features, British interior designer Nicholas Haslam claimed that he had an affair with Snowdon before the latter's marriage to Princess Margaret, and that Snowdon had also been the lover of Tom Parr, another leading interior designer. The couple remained married for 18 years. They were both pretty strong-willed and accustomed to having their own way, so there were bound to be collisions, according to de Courcy. His work also consumed a great deal of time. She expected her husband to be with her more, but one of Tony's strongest motivations was work. The marriage was accompanied by drugs, alcohol, and bizarre behavior by both parties, such as his leaving lists of things I hate about you for the princess to find between the pages of books she read. According to biographer Sarah Bradford, one note read, "You look like a Jewish manicurist and I hate you." When high society called for Snowdon, he would escape to a hideaway cottage with his lovers or on overseas photographic assignments. Most people, including the royal family, took his side. Among Snowdon's lovers in the late 1960s was Lady Jacqueline Rufus Isaacs, daughter of the 3rd Marquess of Reading. In spite of her own affairs, Margaret was said to be particularly upset when hearing about this woman. They separated in 1976, and the marriage ended in divorce in 1978. In 2004, the Sunday Telegraph reported that Snowdon had fathered an illegitimate daughter shortly before marrying Princess Margaret. Anne de Courcy reported the claim by Polly Fry, born on May 28, 1960, in the 3rd week of Lord Snowdon's marriage to Princess Margaret, and brought up as a daughter of Jeremy Fry, inventor and member of the Fry's chocolate family, and his first wife, Camilla, that she was in fact Snowdon's daughter. Polly Fry asserted that a DNA test in 2004 proved Snowdon's paternity. Jeremy Fry rejected her claim, and Snowdon denied having taken a DNA test. However, 4 years later, after Fry had died, Snowdon admitted that this account was true. Second marriage. After his divorce from Princess Margaret, Lord Snowdon married Lucy Mary Lindsay-Hogg, the former wife of Sir Michael Edward Lindsay-Hogg, 5th Baronet, on December 15, 1978. Armstrong-Jones's youngest daughter, with Lucy Mary, is Lady Frances Armstrong-Jones, a designer and board member of the Snowdon Trust. She was born on July 17, 1979 and in 2006 married Rodolphe Edler von Hofmannsthal, great-grandson of Hugo von Hofmannsthal and Charles Paget, 6th Marquess of Anglesey and great-great-grandson of Henry Manners, 8th Duke of Rutland. From 1976 until 1996, Snowdon also had a mistress, journalist Anne Hills. She died by suicide on December 31, 1996. The couple separated in 2000 after the revelation that Snowdon, then aged 67, had fathered a son, Jasper William Oliver Cable Alexander, with Melanie Cable Alexander, an editor at Country Life magazine. Death. Lord Snowdon died peacefully at his home in Kensington on January 13, 2017, aged 86. His funeral took place on 20 January at St Baglan's Church in the remote village of Lanfaglan near Caernarfon. He was buried in the family plot in the churchyard. Titles, honours, and arms. Peerage. Following his wedding, Armstrong-Jones was granted an earldom and introduced to the House of Lords as the Earl of Snowdon on February 28, 1962. The awarding of the earldom was in line with the practice of granting titles upon marriage into the royal family. Snowdon was appointed Constable of Caernarfon Castle in 1963. As part of this role, he assisted in organising the investiture of the Prince of Wales in 1969. He made his maiden speech in the House of Lords in April 1972 on the problems that disabled people suffered in everyday life. One of his last contributions to the Lords was in response to the Queen's speech of 1992. On November 16, 1999, Lord Snowdon was created Baron Armstrong-Jones, of Nymans in the county of West Sussex. This was a life peerage given to him so that he could keep his seat in the House of Lords after most hereditary peers had been excluded. An offer of a life peerage was made to all hereditary peers of the first creation at that time. The government of the day had expected Lord Snowdon to follow the example of members of the royal family and turn down his right to a life peerage. At the time, Labour MP Fraser Kemp said he was shocked and surprised that someone who achieved their position in the House of Lords by virtue of marriage should accept a seat in the Reformed Lords. Snowdon retired from the House of Lords on March 31, 2016, having seldom attended nor claimed any expenses for many years. Awards and Honours. GCVO, Knight Grand Cross of the Royal Victorian Order, July 7, 1969. He was awarded the Royal Photographic Society's Progress Medal and an honorary fellowship in 1985. In 1989, he was awarded an honorary Doctor of Laws from the University of Bath. Arms. Issue. By Camilla Grinling Fry, by Princess Margaret, by Lucy Lindsay Hogg, by Melanie Cable Alexander. In popular culture, Armstrong-Jones is portrayed in the Netflix series The Crown in Season 2 by Matthew Good and in Season 3 by Ben Daniels.